The great hall of the Galactic Council Station stretched out like a crystal cathedral in space. Its walls were made of clear metal that sparkled with light from distant stars. Inside this massive room, creatures from across the galaxy sat in perfect circles, their voices echoing off the high ceiling. Ambassador Chen Wei walked slowly down the center aisle. His black hair was touched with gray, and his dark eyes showed the tiredness of someone who had been fighting the same battle for too long. Behind him, 6 other humans followed in neat rows. Their blue uniforms looked plain next to the colorful robes and shining armor of the alien. Delegates. Chan found his seat in the 3rd ring from the center. It was not a good spot. The important species sat in the inner circle, where their words carried more weight. The humans had been placed with the newer members, the ones the older races still thought of as children. Above them all, floating in the air like a ghost made of light, was Architect Prime Veltar. The architect had no solid body, just streams of energy that moved like water. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Today we continue our talks about the Devourer threat, Veltar announced. We've been meeting for 3 months now. We must find the right answer. Chen bit back a bitter laugh. 3 months of talking while stars went dark. 3 months of careful words while entire worlds disappeared. The Devourers were eating the galaxy from the outside in, and these ancient beings wanted to have more meetings. In the 2nd ring sat the Collective Queen. She looked like a tall woman made of black metal, but Chen knew she was really thousands of minds linked together. Her voice was strange, like many people speaking the same words at exactly the same time. The Collective has run new calculations, she said. We need shield generators around every star system. Big ones that can stop the energy eaters from getting close. How long would that take? Asked a small furry creature from the outer ring. Only 47 standard years, the Queen replied. It is the safest plan. Chen felt his jaw tighten. 47 years. By then, the Devourers would have eaten half the galaxy. He raised his hand to speak, but Veltar did not see him, or chose not to see him. Instead, the architect turned to the synthesist logic core. This being looked like a tall, thin human made of silver metal. Its eyes glowed blue, and when it moved, it made small clicking sounds like a machine. Logic core, what do your computers say about this plan? Veltar asked. The shield plan has a 73.6% chance of success, the machine being replied. However, our models show the Devourers will consume 12,847 more systems before we finish building. This is acceptable loss. Acceptable loss. Chen's hands made fists. 12,000 star systems. Billions of lives. Acceptable. Finally, Veltar noticed Chen's raised hand. Yes, human delegate. You wish to speak? Chen stood up. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes turned to look. Some were curious. Most looked bored or annoyed. Thank you, Prime Veltar, Chen said, keeping his voice calm. My team has been studying the Devourer attacks. We think there's a faster way to stop them. Oh? Veltar's energy streams moved in what might have been amusement. Please, tell us about your solution. Chen activated his datapad. Above their heads, a hologram appeared showing the battle reports from the last 6 months. Every time we fight the Devourers with big fleets using standard tactics, we lose. They learn our patterns too fast. But look at this. He pointed to a small battle near the Rim Worlds. A single human cargo ship attacked a Devourer scout. The pilot flew straight at it. No shields, no backup plan. Just raw speed and determination. The Devourer couldn't adapt fast enough. It was destroyed. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Some sounded interested. Others sounded disgusted. What are you suggesting? Asked the Collective Queen. Small ships. Fast attacks. No predictable patterns. Hit them where they don't expect it, in ways they can't understand or copy. Use their need to analyze everything against them. Chun's datapad showed more images. We could have fleets of small fighters ready in 3 months, not 47 years. Human pilots are volunteering for missions that might not bring them home. We're willing to sacrifice everything to win. The hall erupted in noise. Aliens clicked, buzzed, and whistled their opinions. Most of the sounds were angry. Veltar raised one stream of light, and the room became quiet again. Human Chun, your species is still young. You do not understand the complexities of galactic warfare. We have been fighting wars since before your world had fire. Trust in our wisdom. But our way isn't working, Chun said, his voice getting stronger. How many more worlds have to die while we build shields and have meetings? The logic core's blue eyes flashed. Emotion is clouding your judgment. Human. Military decisions cannot be based on feelings. Your plans are chaotic and inefficient. Chaotic, yes, Chun agreed. That's exactly why they'll work. The Devourers expect order. They expect logical plans they can study and counter. But humans don't always follow logic. Sometimes we do crazy things that work because nobody expects them. The collective queen spoke, her many voices blending into one cold sound. Sacrifice is wasteful. The collective preserves every mind. Your willingness to throw away lives shows your primitive nature. Chun felt his temper rising but kept it under control. We're not throwing lives away. We're choosing to risk everything to save everything. There's a difference. The difference is civilization, Veltar said with finality. Young species often confuse courage with foolishness. When your people have lived as long as ours, you will understand the value of careful planning. The architect turned to address the whole assembly. We shall continue with the shield plan. It is tested. It is safe. It is wise. Chun sat down hard in his chair. Around him, the other human delegates looked angry and frustrated. Captain Torres, the military advisor, leaned over to whisper in his ear. Sir, our intelligence reports say the Devourers will reach the core systems in 6 months. Not 47 years. 6 months? Chun nodded grimly. He had known this was coming. The ancient species were so sure of their wisdom that they couldn't see their own destruction approaching. They would rather die slowly using old methods than live by trying new ones. The meeting continued for 4 more hours. More talk, more careful planning, more polite words while the galaxy burned. When it finally ended, Chun and his team walked out in silence. Behind them, the great crystal hall echoed with the voices of the oldest, wisest species in the galaxy. They were still talking, still planning, still believing that age meant wisdom and wisdom meant safety. They were wrong. And Chun was beginning to think it was time to show them just how wrong they were. 2 weeks had passed since the last big meeting. 2 weeks of smaller committees, subgroups, and endless reports. Chun sat in his quarters on the human diplomatic ship, reading the latest intelligence updates. The news was not good. Sir? Captain Torres knocked on his door. The emergency session is about to start. Chun closed his datapad and followed Torres through the ship's narrow corridors. The emergency had come faster than anyone expected. 3 more star systems had gone dark in the past 48 hours. The Devourers were moving faster, growing bolder. The council chamber felt different this time. There was fear in the air, sharp and bitter like smoke. The usual calm discussions had been replaced by worried whispers and nervous movements. Veltar floated in the center, its light streams moving faster than usual. Council members, the situation has become critical. The Devourers have changed their attack pattern. They are no longer moving in predictable waves. Chun leaned forward. Finally, maybe they would listen to reason. The collective queen spoke next. Our hive mind has analyzed the new data. The Devourers appear to be learning from each battle. They adapt their tactics within minutes of encountering resistance. Exactly what we told you, Chun muttered under his breath. The logic core's mechanical voice cut through the murmurs. Probability of shield construction success has dropped to 31.7%. The Devourers are moving too fast. We need a new approach. Chun stood up quickly. Council Prime, if I may speak. Veltar's energy streams seemed to dim. Very well, human delegate. My tactical team has been running non-stop simulations. We can have a strike force ready in 2 weeks. Small, fast ships using unpredictable attack patterns. We hit them before they can adapt, then disappear. It's guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Chun could hear words like primitive, barbaric, and madness in a dozen different languages. Veltar raised its streams for silence. Human Chun, your species continues to propose violence as the first solution. This is precisely why younger races must be guided by elder wisdom. Guided? Chun felt his patience finally starting to crack. You mean controlled. Precisely, said a new voice from the inner circle. Council Elder Zarthik of the Dominion rose from his seat. He looked like a giant lizard wearing golden robes, and his yellow eyes glowed with ancient pride. Younger species lack the perspective to make proper decisions during crises. They panic. They make emotional choices that endanger everyone. Chun's hands tightened into fists. We're not panicking. We're trying to save lives. By throwing away your own lives meaninglessly, the collective queen replied. The collective values every mind. Your willingness to sacrifice individuals shows your evolutionary immaturity. Captain Torres whispered urgently to Chun. Sir, our latest intelligence says the Devourers will reach Earth's sector in 4 months. Not 6. 4 months. Chun felt something cold and hard settle in his stomach. These ancient beings were going to debate their way to extinction. Council Prime, Chun said, standing again. My species has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear weapons. We've faced extinction before and won. Not through careful planning or ancient wisdom, but through the willingness to do whatever it takes. Veltar's voice carried a note of condescension that made Chun's jaw tighten. Human Chen, your species has existed for a mere 10,000 years of civilization. The architects have guided galactic affairs for over 1,000,000 years. Do you truly believe your brief experience equals our accumulated wisdom? Maybe not, Chen replied. But our brief experience includes actually winning impossible wars. The logic core's blue eyes flashed brighter. Emotion is corrupting your logic centers, human. Military success requires calculated probability, not instinctive aggression. Our instincts kept us alive when logic would have gotten us killed. Chun shot back. Elder Zarthik stood to his full 8-foot height. This is exactly the problem. Humans rely on primitive instincts instead of evolved reasoning. They are a danger to themselves and others. The chamber buzzed with agreement from many of the older species. Chun looked around and saw hundreds of alien faces nodding in approval. They really believed it. They thought humans were dangerous children who needed to be controlled. I propose a formal motion, Elder Zarthik continued. Given the current crisis and the humans' demonstrated inability to follow proper protocols, I move that Earth and all human colonies be placed under Council protection status. Chun felt the blood drain from his face. Protection status. It sounded nice, but he knew what it meant. Human ships would be grounded. Human weapons would be confiscated. Human tactical knowledge would be filed away and ignored. They would become protected pets while the galaxy burned. All in favor? Veltar asked. Lights began appearing across the chamber. Red for yes, blue for no. Chun watched in growing horror as red lights outnumbered blue by more than 6-1. The older species voted as a bloc. Some of the younger races joined them, hoping to gain favor with the elders. Motion passed, Veltar announced. Effective immediately, humanity is placed under Council protection status. All human military assets will be transferred to Council control within 72 standard hours. The chamber erupted in cheers and applause from most of the delegates. A few of the younger species looked uncomfortable, but they stayed quiet. Chun stood slowly. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady when he spoke. Council Prime, may I address the Assembly one final time? Of course, human delegate. Though your protection status begins immediately, you may speak. Chun looked around the great crystal hall. He saw beings from 1,000 worlds, creatures who had lived for centuries, civilizations that had existed since before his species discovered fire. They were all looking at him with the same expression his own grandfather had once worn when correcting a small child. Honored delegates, Chun began, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the chamber. 3 months ago, you asked humanity to join this alliance against the Devourers. We came because we believed in working together. We shared our knowledge, our resources, our willingness to fight. He paused, looking directly at Veltar. But you never wanted allies. You wanted obedient children who would follow orders and never question your wisdom. Murmurs of displeasure rose from the crowd. But Chun continued. You call us primitive because we're willing to die for our beliefs. You call us chaotic because we don't follow your ancient rules. You call us dangerous because we think there might be new solutions to old problems. Chun's voice grew stronger. But here's what you're going to remember when the Devourers are eating your home worlds. You had allies who knew how to fight impossible wars. You had partners who had survived every extinction event their world could throw at them. You had friends who would have died to protect your children. The chamber had grown completely silent. Even Veltar's energy streams had stopped moving. And you chose to treat them like dangerous pets instead of trusted allies. Chun looked at Captain Torres and the other human delegates. Pack our things. We're going home. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Elder Zarthik laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Where will you go, little human? You need our protection. Your species cannot survive alone in a galaxy full of threats. Chun smiled for the first time in weeks. It was not a pleasant smile. Counselor Zarthik, my species has been surviving alone since before your civilization learned to make fire. We'll figure it out. He turned and walked toward the exit. The other humans followed without a word. Behind them, the Great Assembly sat in stunned silence, watching their newest allies walk away into an uncertain future. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On the trade station at Nexus Point, a Keth merchant named Velkan was loading cargo when his communication device buzzed with an emergency alert. He read the message twice, his 4 eyes widening with each word. Humans withdrawing from all Council space. All human vessels ordered to return to Sol Sector immediately. Around him, the busy loading dock suddenly felt very quiet. Human cargo ships had been a common sight here for the past 5 years. They were reliable, fast, and their crews were known for being helpful when other ships had problems. Now they were leaving. Vulcan watched as the human freighter New Shanghai powered up its engines across the docking bay. Captain Rodriguez had been trading here for 3 years. They had shared many drinks and stories together. But now the captain wouldn't even return his communication calls. The same scene was playing out on 1,000 stations and ports across Council space. Human ships were departing with no explanations, no goodbyes, no discussions about future contracts. They simply left. Back on the Council station, the assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy. The vote to place humans under protection had been celebrated just 6 hours ago. Now that celebration felt hollow and strange. "Perhaps we acted too quickly," said Counselor Thekmi of the Zilani. She was young for her species, only 200 years old, and her blue skin showed the worry patterns of her people. The humans seemed genuinely upset. Elder Zarthik waved a dismissive hand. "Let them have their tantrum. They will return when they realize they need our protection. Younger species always do." But Architect Prime Veltar seemed less certain. Its energy streams moved in slow, thoughtful patterns. The humans have withdrawn all their ships very efficiently. This was planned in advance. The logic core processed this information with mechanical precision. Probability analysis suggests the humans anticipated this outcome. Their withdrawal is too organized to be spontaneous. In the outer rings of the assembly, some of the younger species were having their own discussions. The Keth delegate, Ambassador Velron, spoke quietly to his neighbors. "My cousin works at Nexus Point," he said. Human traders, they were buying extra fuel and supplies for weeks. They were preparing to leave. The Zilani delegate nodded. "Our intelligence reports show human ships gathering in remote sectors. They have been building supply bases in neutral space." "Why would they do that?" asked the representative from New Corinth. An older voice answered from behind them. It was Sage Mordun of the Eternal Brotherhood, a species known for their long memories and careful observations. "Because they have seen this pattern before," the sage said quietly. "Read their history. Humans have been forced to choose between freedom and safety many times. They always choose freedom, even when it means suffering." Meanwhile, in deep space, the human exodus continued. Cargo ships, passenger vessels, scientific research platforms, even small private yachts, all heading toward the outer rim where human colonies waited. Admiral Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Defiant, watching the flow of ships on her tactical display. Each dot of light represented human families, human dreams, human hopes for the future. All of them leaving behind the promise of galactic civilization to return to uncertainty. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're getting messages from Council species requesting meetings. The Keth want to establish private trade agreements. The Zilani are asking about defensive pacts." "Any from the elder species?" Okafor asked. "No, ma'am. Radio silence from the Architects, Collective, and Dominion." Okafor wasn't surprised. The elder species had made their position clear. Humans were children who couldn't be trusted with adult decisions. Pride would never let them admit they might have made a mistake. "What about Ambassador Chun? Any word from the diplomatic team?" "Yes, ma'am. Ambassador Chun reports that 17 younger species have approached him privately. They're concerned about the Council's handling of the Devourer crisis." Okafor nodded grimly. The younger species had reason to be worried. They knew that if the Devourers couldn't be stopped, their worlds would be the first to die. The elder species lived in the heavily defended core systems. The outer rim colonies would be eaten first. On the mining station at Kepler's Edge, human supervisor Mike Hassan was shutting down the facility's main operations. His crew of 30 humans was packing essential equipment while abandoning the massive infrastructure they had built over the past 8 years. "Boss," his foreman called out, "the Alterian crew wants to know if they can take over the operation." Hassan looked at the group of tall, thin aliens who had worked alongside his people for years. They were good workers and decent beings, but they didn't have the human talent for extracting minerals from impossible locations. "Tell them they're welcome to try," Hassan said sadly. "But this station was designed for human reflexes and human problem-solving. They'll struggle to keep it running." The Alterian supervisor, a being named Siltar, approached Hassan directly. "My friend, why are you leaving? We have worked well together. The Council's protection laws do not apply here in neutral space." Hassan paused his packing. Siltar had been a good friend and partner. It's not about the laws, Sil. It's about respect. The council made it clear that they think humans are dangerous children who can't make their own decisions. We can't work with people who don't trust us. But the Devourers are coming, Siltar protested. Everyone needs to work together. The council doesn't want us to work together, Hassan replied. They want us to shut up and follow orders. That's not partnership. That's slavery with better food. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening on hundreds of stations, colonies, and trading posts. Humans were not just leaving. They were explaining why they were leaving. And many non-human species were beginning to understand that something important had been lost. Back on Earth, President Chen Wei's sister, Dr. Liu Chun, was coordinating the largest logistical operation in human history. From her office in Geneva, she managed the return of nearly 2 million humans from across the galaxy. Status report, she requested from her staff. Civilian evacuation is 67% complete, her aide reported. Military withdrawal is ahead of schedule. Admiral Okafor reports all strategic assets have been removed from Council space. Any word from the Council? Several individual species have requested private negotiations, but the main Council hasn't officially responded. Dr. Chun looked out her window at the busy spaceport below. Ships were landing every hour, bringing home humans who had left Earth to help build a better galaxy. Now they were coming back. Not in defeat, but in defiance. Her communication system chimed with an urgent message from Admiral Okafor. The text was short but alarming. Council intelligence suggests his Devourer advance faster than predicted. Estimated arrival at Outer Rim, 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Dr. Chun felt her stomach drop. The Council's shield plan would take decades. Their careful committees and wise deliberations meant nothing now. In 8 weeks, the Devourers would reach the first inhabited systems, and humanity would not be there to help, defend them. She thought about her brother, standing proudly in that crystal hall, walking away from the most powerful alliance in galactic history. The elder species thought humans were too proud, too stubborn, too dangerous to be trusted. Maybe they were right about the stubborn part. Humans had always been willing to stand alone when standing together meant giving up their principles. Throughout history, they had chosen difficult independence over comfortable submission. But as she watched another ship full of returning humans land at the spaceport below, Dr. Chun wondered if this time human stubbornness might doom not just humanity, but every free species in the galaxy. The Devourers were coming, and the galaxy had just lost its most experienced fighters. Whether that was humanity's fault or the Council's fault would soon be decided by fire and darkness among the stars. The first attack came without warning. Commander Zelther of the Collective Defense Fleet was reviewing formation patterns when his ship's sensors suddenly screamed with alerts. Where empty space had been just moments before, dark shapes now moved like living shadows against the stars. Contact, contact, his sensor operator called out. Multiple Devourer vessels dropping out of hyperspace. They're not following standard approach vectors. Zelther's mind instantly connected to the collective hive mind. Thousands of thoughts merged into one perfect tactical consciousness. The fleet would respond as a single organism, just as they had trained for centuries. All ships, Formation 7, Zelther commanded. Present unified front. Activate harmonic shield grid. 300 collective warships moved with perfect precision. Each vessel knew exactly where it needed to be, exactly when to fire, exactly how to support its neighbors. It was military art refined over 1 million years. The Vajyams. Devourers ignored every rule of engagement the collective knew. Instead of approaching in battle formations, they scattered like insects. Instead of concentrating firepower, They attacked from dozens of different angles. Instead of following logical targeting priorities, they seemed to choose victims at random. "They're not making sense," the sensor operator reported, panic creeping into his voice. "No pattern, no formation, no strategy." But there was a strategy. The Devourers were learning from every shot the collective fired, every movement their ships made, every tactical decision the hive mind chose. Within minutes, they began to predict the collective's perfect coordination. When the collective ships moved left, the Devourers were already there. When they concentrated fire, the enemy had already shifted position. The perfect unity that made the collective so powerful had become their greatest weakness. "They're reading our hive mind," Zelther realized in horror. "Every thought, every decision. They know what we're going to do before we do it." The battle became a massacre. Collective ships exploded in perfect sequence as the Devourers turned their own coordination against them. Within 2 hours, the most disciplined fleet in galactic history was running in panic. News of the defeat reached the Council Station within hours. In the Great Crystal Hall, emergency sessions replaced the usual careful deliberations. Fear hung in the air like smoke. The collective lost 73% of their fleet, reported Admiral Cothram, the military coordinator. The Devourers adapted to their tactics in real time. "Our coordination protocols have been compromised." Architect Prime Veltar's energy streams moved in agitated patterns. "How is this possible?" "The collective's hive mind has been perfected over eons." "That's exactly the problem," said a small voice from the outer ring. Junior Counselor Nix of the Zelani stood up nervously. "The Devourers learn from predictable behavior. The more perfect our tactics, the easier we are to counter." Elder Zarthik's yellow eyes flashed with anger. "Are you suggesting our military wisdom is flawed, child?" "I'm suggesting that maybe the humans had a point about unpredictable warfare," Nix replied, her blue skin showing stress patterns. "Nonsense," Zarthik snapped. "One defeat does not invalidate a million years of strategic evolution. We need better coordination, not chaos." But the defeats continued. The Architect fleet met the Devourers at the Helix Nebula 3 days later. Their strategy was elegance itself, pure energy beings fighting with weapons of living light. Their attacks could destroy matter at the quantum level, unmaking enemy ships atom by atom, that the Devourers ate the energy attacks and grew stronger. Impossible. Admiral Tethian broadcasted as her flagship's quantum disruptors were absorbed like water into a sponge. "They're converting our weapons into fuel." The Architect fleet tried to retreat, but the Devourers had learned to predict their movement patterns. Energy beings that had fought for a million years found themselves outmaneuvered by creatures that had existed for mere decades. On the Council Station, panic was replacing careful deliberation. Species that had spent centuries debating minor trade disputes now faced extinction within weeks. "The Synthesis Fleet reports similar results," Admiral Cothram announced grimly. Their battle computers calculated optimal strategies, but the Devourers countered every algorithm. "It's as if they can read our logic patterns." Logic Core's blue eyes flickered rapidly as it processed this information. "Error in assumption detected. Devourers do not follow standard tactical parameters. Our computational models are insufficient." "Damn, what do we do?" demanded Counselor Rickstar of the Dominion. "Every fleet we send gets destroyed." A heavy silence fell over the assembly. For the first time in galactic history, the elder species had no answers. "Maybe," said a quiet voice from the outer ring, "we should have listened to the humans." It was Ambassador Velron of the Keth. His people were merchants and traders. Not warriors, but they had worked closely with humans for years. He had seen how human crews handled impossible situations. "The humans warned us about this," Velron continued, growing bolder. "They said the Devourers would adapt to predictable tactics. They offered unpredictable warfare. Barbarism, Elder Zarthik spat. Chaos cannot defeat order. Order isn't defeating chaos either, shot back Counselor Dekmi of the Zelani. Maybe it's time to admit we made a mistake. Mistake? Veltar's energy streams brightened with indignation. We followed proper protocols. We maintained galactic stability. The humans were emotional and reckless. The humans were right. The voice came from an unexpected source, Sage Morden of the Eternal Brotherhood. The ancient being rarely spoke in council sessions, but when he did, everyone listened. I have lived for 3,000 years, Morden said slowly. I have seen many wars, many crises, many moments when the galaxy faced extinction. And I have learned something that you elder species seem to have forgotten. The hall grew completely silent. Sometimes wisdom means admitting you don't know everything. Sometimes experience means knowing when your experience isn't enough. The humans offered something new, something different. And we rejected it because it wasn't old. But it's too late now, said Admiral Cothram. The humans are gone. They withdrew all their ships, all their knowledge. They left us to face this alone. Did they? Asked Counselor Nix of the Zelani. Has anyone actually tried to contact them since they left? The question hung in the air like an accusation. In their pride and anger, the Council had never even attempted to reach out to humanity after the withdrawal. They abandoned their allies, Elder Zarthik said defensively. They showed their true nature. They left after we voted to treat them like children, Nix replied. They didn't abandon us. We rejected them. As if summoned by their discussion, an aide hurried into the chamber with an urgent message. Counselors, we're receiving emergency signals from the Outer Rim. The Devourers have reached inhabited systems. The colony at New Athens is under attack. New Athens. A peaceful agricultural world with 12 million inhabitants. The first real test of whether the galaxy could survive what was coming. Our response fleets? Veltar asked. 6 hours away at minimum, the aide replied. The colonists are requesting immediate assistance. Elder Zarthik stood up slowly. Send whatever ships are available. We cannot abandon innocent civilians. But everyone in the chamber knew the truth. Their fleets had been broken against an enemy that fought like no one they had ever faced. Their perfect tactics, their ancient wisdom, their careful strategies, none of it worked. Against creatures that learned faster than light itself, the Devourers were no longer coming. They had arrived, and the galaxy's greatest military powers had been proven utterly helpless against them. In the Outer Ring. Counselor Nix looked around the great crystal hall at the faces of beings from 1,000 worlds. They were all thinking the same thing, though none would say it aloud. They needed the humans, but the humans were gone, driven away by the very pride that now left the galaxy defenseless. The elder species had chosen their ancient dignity over survival itself, and now, as the first civilian populations faced extinction, that choice was about to cost them everything. The evacuation ships were fleeing. New Athens, when space itself seemed to explode around them. Captain Yurthan of the refugee transport, Safe Harbor, watched his sensors in confusion as dozens of ships suddenly appeared from nowhere. But these weren't the dark, organic shapes of the Devourers. These were human vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, converted passenger liners, even what looked like racing yachts. This is crazy, his navigator whispered. Those ships aren't military. They're civilians. The lead ship was broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice was calm, almost casual, like someone discussing the weather. This is Admiral Sarah Okafor of the Terran Defense Force to all Devourer vessels currently attacking New Athens. You have 10 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will demonstrate why humans are considered galactically inappropriate. Captain Yurthan couldn't believe what he was hearing. A human admiral, addressing creatures that had destroyed 3 of the galaxy's most powerful fleets, was giving them an ultimatum. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. The Devourers ignored the warning, as expected. They had learned that most species made empty threats when facing superior force. They had never faced humans before. The first human attack came from directly above the main Devourer formation, an angle that made no tactical sense since it left the attacker exposed to concentrated fire. A converted cargo ship called Lucky Strike dove straight down at full speed, its hull glowing from atmospheric friction. The Devourers analyzed this primitive tactic in milliseconds. Simple kamikaze attack. They had seen similar desperation from dying species before. They calculated optimal intercept angles and prepared to destroy the attacking vessel. The cargo ship vanished in a massive explosion, but it wasn't destroyed by enemy fire. The humans had detonated it themselves, right in the middle of the Devourer formation. The explosion wasn't random. It was carefully timed to create a debris field that blocked the enemy's sensors for exactly 17 seconds. In those 17 seconds, 40 more human ships attacked from impossible directions. Mining vessels came from beneath the planetary disk, their industrial lasers cutting into Devourer hulls like hot knives through butter. Racing yachts darted between the larger ships, too small and fast to target effectively. Passenger liners converted into missile platforms launched everything they had, and then rammed enemy vessels before the Devourers could adapt to their sacrificial tactics. What are they doing? Yurthan's navigator asked in amazement. This isn't warfare. This is insanity. But it was working. The Devourers, for the first time since their arrival, were being pushed back. Their adaptation protocols couldn't process the humans' complete disregard for military logic. Every time they predicted a tactical pattern, the humans did something that made no sense at all. Admiral Okafor stood on the bridge of her flagship, a converted cruise liner called Wandering Star. Her tactical display showed chaos, human ships scattered across the battle zone with no apparent coordination. No formation discipline, no regard for standard engagement protocols. It was exactly what she wanted to see. "Boss," her communications officer called out. "The Devourer flagship is trying to retreat. Should we pursue?" "Negative," Okafor replied. "Let it run. We want it to tell its friends that humans fight differently." On the refugee ship, Captain Yurthan watched in wonder as the massive Devourer formation broke apart and fled into hyperspace. Ships that had destroyed collective hive fleets and architect energy squadrons were running from converted civilian vessels. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we're getting a transmission from the human admiral." Admiral Okafor's image appeared on their main screen. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just finished a difficult but necessary job. "Captain Yurthan, this is Admiral Okafor. Your evacuation fleet is secure. The Devourers have withdrawn from this system." "Admiral," Yurthan said, finding his voice, "how did you do that? Our best fleets couldn't even slow them down." Okafor smiled grimly. "Captain, the Devourers are perfect learning machines. They can adapt to any logical strategy, counter any predictable tactic, absorb any conventional attack. They're brilliant." She paused, looking at something off-screen. "But they can adapt to complete insanity delivered with absolute commitment. Humans don't fight to win battles according to the rules. We fight to solve problems by any means necessary." "But your losses," Yurthan protested. "So many ships destroyed?" 12 ships lost, Okafor agreed. 347 people who volunteered to die so that 12 million civilians could live. In human mathematics, that's not a loss. That's victory. The transmission ended, leaving Yurthan staring at his blank screen. 300 people had chosen to die for strangers from a different species. They had flown converted civilian ships against creatures that had terrorized the galaxy. and they had won through sheer force of will. It was the kind of victory that the elder species would call primitive and wasteful. It was also the kind of victory that worked. News of the Battle of New Athens spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species knew that the unstoppable devourers had been stopped by converted human cargo ships and mining vessels. On the council station, the emergency assembly was in chaos. Species that had dismissed humanity's withdrawal were now demanding immediate contact with Earth. The careful dignity of galactic civilization had been replaced by desperate practicality. We must request human assistance immediately, declared Councillor Dekmi of the Zolani. They are clearly the only ones who can fight this enemy effectively. Elder Zarthik's pride fought against reality. One battle does not prove their methods are superior. It could have been luck. Luck? Ambassador Velron of the Keth stood up angrily. They saved 12 million lives with fishing boats and cargo haulers. How is that luck? Architect Prime Veltar energy streams moved in slow, thoughtful patterns. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that we were mistaken about human capabilities. The admission sent ripples of shock through the assembly. Veltar had led the galactic community for over 50,000 years. For it to admit error was almost unprecedented. Logic Core's blue eyes flickered rapidly. Probability analysis suggests human tactical approach may be optimal against adaptive enemies. Chaos theory indicates unpredictable systems cannot be perfectly countered. So what do we do? Asked Admiral Cothram. How do we contact them after driving them away? The answer came from an unexpected source. The great doors of the assembly hall opened, and a small group of humans walked in. Leading them was Ambassador Chen Wei, looking exactly as calm and composed as he had when he left. Behind him came Admiral Okafor, Captain Torres, and 3 other humans wearing the simple blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps. The hall fell completely silent as Chen walked down the center aisle to his old seat in the 3rd ring. But this time, he didn't sit down. He stood facing the inner circle where the elder species waited. "Counselors," Chen said quietly, "I believe you wanted to speak with us." Elder Zarthik found his voice first. "Human Chen, we were not expecting your return. Given the current crisis, perhaps we can discuss modifications to your protection status." Chen held up one hand, and the elder fell silent. "Counselor Zarthik, humanity is not here to discuss our status in your alliance. We're here to discuss your membership in ours." The gasps that echoed through the hall would have been audible from space. "You see," Chen continued, "while you were having meetings and debates, we were building our own defense network. 17 younger species have already joined the Human Defense Alliance. We've been preparing for this war while you were planning for committees." Admiral Okafor stepped forward. "Our offer is simple. Any species that wants protection from the Devourers can join our alliance. We'll teach you our tactics, share our strategies, and fight alongside you as equals. And if we refuse?" Veltar asked. Chen's smile was polite but cold. "Then you can continue fighting the Devourers your way. We've seen how well that works." The silence stretched for a full minute. Finally, Sage Mordem of the Eternal Brotherhood stood slowly. "The Brotherhood accepts your offer," he said formally. "We choose survival over pride." One by one, other voices joined in. The Zolani, the Keth, the Alterians, even some of the middle-tier species who had supported the protection vote. But the elder species, the architects, the collective, the Dominion, remained silent, their ancient pride warring with desperate necessity. Chum looked at them with something like pity. "The invitation remains open," he said. "When you decide that survival is more important than being right, you know how to find us." He turned to leave, but Veltar's voice stopped him. "Human Chun, if we were to consider this alliance, What would be required? Chun paused without turning around. Respect, he said simply. Recognition that a species doesn't need to be ancient to have wisdom. Acceptance that sometimes the best solution comes from the newest voice in the room. He looked back over his shoulder, and the understanding that when humans offered to die for your children, we're not being primitive. We're being friends. The great crystal hall watched as humanity's delegation walked out for the second time. But this time, they weren't leaving alone. Representatives from 19 species followed them, choosing to stand with the galaxy's youngest.